You did the responsible thing. Every month, you moved a little money into savings, $100 here, $200 there. You didn't blow it on anything, you didn't touch it. You watched the number grow, and it felt good, disciplined, mature, exactly what you were supposed to do. Then one day, you open your banking app and actually do the math. $10,000 sitting there. Interest rate 0.5%. After an entire year of doing everything right, you've earned $50. $50. Less than what most people spend on a single week of groceries. Here's the part almost nobody explains to you when you open that account. Your bank isn't just holding your $10,000. In a lot of cases, it's lending pieces of that same money back out to other customers as credit card balances, auto loans, personal loans, at interest rates of 7%, 12%, sometimes over 20%. You're being paid 0.5%. Someone else is being charged 20 times that, using money that, functionally, traces back to your account. That gap between what you earn and what the bank earns off your money sitting there isn't a glitch. It's the business model. And once you understand it, the whole idea of saving starts to look different. In this video, you're going to learn three things. 1. Exactly how much that gap between saving and investing actually costs you over time. And the number, over a couple decades, is bigger than most people expect. 2. Why your bank has almost no incentive to pay you more, even when it can clearly afford to. 3. The specific step-by-step way to move from money sitting there to money working for you, without taking on more risk than you're actually comfortable with. Let's start with the math, because the math is what makes this real instead of just a feeling. Take that same $10,000. Left in a typical savings account earning around 1%, which is generous for a lot of big banks, after 1 year, you'd have $10,100. Now put that same $10,000 into something that tracks the broader stock market. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned roughly 10% annually over long stretches of time, according to decades of market data. At that rate, after 1 year, you'd have $11,000. That gap, $900 in a single year, already sounds meaningful. But the real story isn't the first year. It's what happens when you let that gap compound. After 20 years, $10,000 sitting in a 1% savings account grows to roughly $12,200. That same $10,000, growing at a historical 10% average, grows to roughly $67,000. Same starting amount, same 20 years. A difference of almost $55,000, not because one path involved luck, but because one path let growth compound and the other one didn't. Here's the sentence worth sitting with. The biggest wealth gap in this country usually isn't between people who save money and people who spend it. It's between people who save and people who invest. Both groups did the responsible thing by not spending. Only one of them let that money actually grow. So if the math is this clear, why doesn't everyone just move their savings into investments? The easy explanation people reach for is investing is complicated, or you need a lot of money to start, or regular people just don't understand the stock market. That's the false summary. It's not really true anymore. Plenty of platforms let you start investing with $50 or $100, and it's not the actual reason most people stay stuck in savings for years, sometimes decades, longer than they need to. Here's the twist. The reason isn't math, it's psychology, and it's being quietly reinforced by the exact institution holding your money. When your money sits in a savings account, you can see it. It doesn't move. It doesn't drop 5% on a random Tuesday. That stillness feels like safety. Investments, by contrast, fluctuate, sometimes sharply, and that volatility is uncomfortable enough that a lot of people simply avoid it, even when avoiding it is quietly costing them tens of thousands of dollars over time. And your bank knows this. A near zero risk, near zero effort savings account is an extremely comfortable place for your money to sit. Comfortable for you emotionally, and comfortable for the bank financially, because as long as your money stays there, the bank can keep using it as cheap funding for the loans it issues at much higher rates. There's no dark conspiracy meeting where someone decided to keep you scared of the stock market. There doesn't need to be. The system just quietly benefits from your hesitation, and nothing about your banking app is designed to correct that. So the real question is investing too complicated? It's how do you make the transition without it feeling reckless? If you're thinking, okay, but I don't want to risk losing my savings, that instinct is correct, not something to override. The mistake isn't wanting safety. The mistake is treating all of your money as if it needs the same kind of safety. This is where saving and investing stop being competitors and start being two different tools for two different jobs. Savings protects your money, investments grow your money. Trying to make one account do both jobs at once is usually where people either get stuck in savings too long or take on investment risk with money they actually needed to stay stable. That distinction is the foundation for everything that comes next. Consider someone we'll call Priya, a nurse in her early 30s, disciplined about money in exactly the way that gets praised. For 6 years, she funneled a few $100s a month into a single savings account, watching the balance climb past $28,000, proud every time she checked it. When a financial advisor eventually walked her through what that money had actually earned over those 6 years, barely enough to cover 1 month of her rent, she described feeling less like she'd been careful and more like she'd been quietly stalled. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd just never been told that responsible and growing aren't automatically the same thing, and that the account rewarding her for being careful was, structurally, also the account benefiting most from her staying exactly where she was. She didn't move everything overnight. She didn't need to. She kept her emergency cushion exactly where it was and started directing new contributions somewhere that could actually grow, which is the same path laid out below. Here's how to make this transition in stages, not all at once. Step 1. Build a real emergency fund first and leave it alone. Before investing a single dollar, aim for 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses in cash in an account you're not tempted to touch. This money isn't for opportunities, it's for the unexpected, a job loss, a medical bill, a car repair. The single biggest reason people panic sell investments during a downturn is that they needed the money sooner than they planned. A solid emergency fund is what protects your investments from your own life circumstances. Step 2. Mentally separate safety money from growth money. Treat these as two different buckets with two different jobs. Safety money isn't supposed to move. Growth money is allowed to fluctuate because fluctuating is part of how it grows over time. Keeping that distinction clear in your head reduces a lot of the anxiety that keeps people frozen. Step 3. Start small, on purpose. You don't need thousands of dollars to begin. Many platforms let you start with $50 or $100. At this stage, the goal isn't maximizing returns, it's building the habit, because consistency matters more than perfect timing ever will. Step 4. Keep your first investments simple. This is where a lot of beginners go wrong, jumping straight into day trading, options, or speculative assets. Broad index funds, which track the overall market instead of betting on individual companies, tend to outperform more complicated strategies for most people, specifically because they spread risk across hundreds of companies at once instead of concentrating it. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in modern history, has repeatedly pointed ordinary investors toward exactly this kind of low-cost index fund investing rather than active stock picking. Step 5. Stay consistent and let time do the heavy lifting. Consider investing $300 a month into the market. At a historical 8% average annual return, after 25 years, that could grow to roughly $285,000. You would have personally contributed about $90,000 of that. The remaining nearly $195,000 comes purely from growth compounding on itself year after year. Money you didn't work for a second time, generated entirely by time and consistency. At this point, a fair question shows up. What happens when the market crashes, right after you finally start investing? Market downturns aren't rare exceptions. They've happened dozens of times throughout market history, and the market has recovered from every single one of them over the long run. Here's the part that surprises a lot of new investors. If you're investing consistently every month, a downturn actually works in your favor because the same monthly contribution buys more shares when prices are lower, shares that are then positioned to grow further once the market recovers. This is why experienced long term investors generally stay calm through volatility. They're measuring success in decades, not in any single afternoon. Here's the uncomfortable part worth sitting with. Nobody set out to trick you by offering a savings account that pays 0.5%. It's simply the default option, and defaults are powerful precisely because they don't require you to make an active decision. The system just keeps working exactly the way it's built to work, quietly, for as long as you let it. Saving isn't wrong, it's step one, not the whole plan. It gives you stability. But stability and growth are two different outcomes, built by two different tools, and mistaking one for the other is the quiet reason a lot of financially careful people end up with a lot less than they could have without ever doing anything that looked like a mistake. The gap between the person who only saves and the person who saves and invests isn't about who worked harder. It's about who understood early enough that those were never the same job. You already have the discipline. That part's proven, or you wouldn't have money sitting there in the first place. The only thing left is deciding to point that same discipline somewhere that compounds.